Have you ever wanted to make your own Star Wars droid, but you don't have a 3D printer? Well, my name is B from Next Mechanics, and I'm going to show you just how you can make your own droid. So way back in the 70s, we didn't have access to 3D printers and stuff, right? So those original droids were kit bashed and scratch built. Some of it was machined, of course, and there was a lot more to it than that, but that's the very basics, and it's something I don't see an awful lot of people do anymore. Don't get me wrong, I love 3D modeling, I do it a lot myself. I've made Transformers and things, it's great fun. But there's something so personal about getting bits of plastic and manually cutting it and sanding, so I want to do some of that. And I highly recommend you guys try it because it's a great introduction to the basics of crafting. Before we begin, we need a design of our character. Now, I did a lot of these just trying to get an idea of shape language and stuff, and eventually I settled on this little guy. Now, we're not necessarily going to follow this design exactly, but it's just enough for us to follow as we're going along, trying to find shapes that kind of match that. What do you mean finding shapes? Well, let me show you my bit box. Or bit shelf, really. See, I'm a bit of a hoarder, I mean crafter, which means that I have lots of milk caps and Christmas ornament baubles and super glues that have dried up and screws and nuts and bolts and all these random bits, hence the bit box. So what we want to do here is find pieces that vaguely match the shape of our design. Again, we're not doing it exactly to the design, but the design sort of helps rein us in and give us a clear goal. So in this case, I'm looking and I'm seeing, okay, we got a plastic sort of sellotape ring. We can use that for the lens. I got a glass doorknob for the eye. The Christmas bauble would be great as a dome head. Broken plastic coat pegs and stuff like that could be great for the feet. Just looking at all these random pieces and seeing what sticks. Once I got all my pieces, it's time to start doing dry fitting. And what I mean by that? Well, I'm not gluing anything yet, but I need to sort of see how the pieces will actually fit together. And this is why I think it's a great beginner's project, because everyone has a natural intuition, and it's usually going to turn out pretty well. And the more you do it, the more tuned you get to what works better than others. One thing to note is you can add joints to your droid as you're building it. So in my case, I use things like screws and pins and very thin wire. Couple of caveats, the screws obviously can unscrew, so on my character's head it's on a screw, and if I turn it too many times, it starts to come undone, so that's a warning. And the other is that the thin wire is obviously thin and fragile, so you want to either wind it up with another piece to make it stronger, or don't make it support too much weight. For his legs, I wanted them to be articulated, but I don't think they would support the weight very well. So unfortunately, his legs are just static wire. So now it's just a matter of gluing pieces together and, like I said, seeing what sticks. So I'm doing things like tubs for the body, the wire legs, then wrapped in like plastic spoons and things, milk caps on everything that I can imagine for the legs, ankles, kneecaps, hips. Now a couple of things with the glue and stuff I'm using is I'm using hot glue and super glue. Hot glue is great, it's really versatile, but you might find that sometimes it doesn't want to stick to plastic because it's so smooth. So what I highly recommend is just very, very lightly sanding it, almost like a polish. Not only will that help give it something for the glue to stick to and grip to, but it also does the same for the paint later on. Speaking of paint, it's time to primer him. Now, I did not love the colors I chose in my design piece, so I'm gonna go with blue and yellow. They contrast each other nicely and they look really pretty. Plus, we're also gonna add some silver because it's robot and I wanna do some metallics. So what I start off with is doing the base coating of everything. Now this is gonna be weathered, so it doesn't have to be perfect. We're just trying to get it to a decent enough brightness where it's not super streaky and it's not super messy. It's good enough. You might wonder why I'm doing the silver in black first, and that's because if I do it black as a base coat and then sponge the silver on, it'll give it a really nice texture where the pieces the sponge miss will be black and add shading. It does mean you have to do a few coats of silver and sometimes even white to get it to the brightness level that you want, because if you do black it'll be kind of grey, but I usually find this works great. I did it on my cyberpunk mask and my axolotl armor, and they turned out fine. Now that all the base coats are done, it is time for the weathering, my favorite part of any prop build. For this, I do a couple of techniques: washes and dry brushing. Now a wash is, ironically enough, not where you clean the model, but where you get your paint, so in my case black, water it really thin down, and then dip it in all the creases and crevices and stuff, and then you get a little paper towel and you dab most of it away. That way, the bits that stay there seep into the crevices and everything, and they just give it a lot of shading. And then dry brushing is basically where you choose your color, so, blue, yellow, silver, whatever, and you get a brighter shade of it than the one you've used. You cover your paintbrush in it, get most of it off, and then you very lightly brush the edges, just giving it little highlights and getting the edges and stuff. It really adds to the contrast and really pops, especially on camera. So, rinse and repeat this process a few times to get to a stage you're happy with. Accidentally do it too much, have to peel it back a bit, redo some of the base coats. Finally, I go over all the little details. The metal wire that's still sticking out his feet, I actually decide to embellish and make it red, so it's like a cable. So that's the metal wire that's supporting him. And then the lens, we masked it off earlier when we did the primer because it's glass and I want that to look nice, but I don't want it to look pristine next to everything. It's gonna look out of place. So I just get a very thin black wash and sort of dirty up just a tiny bit. Not too much, but just enough that it matches the rest of the model more. So, after you've cut, glued, assembled, and painted all of your model, you've now finished your very own Star Wars droid. So, allow me to introduce to you L0U1-3, or Louis. Doesn't he look so great? He's got that right level of Star Warsy cuteness with a big head and little legs. He's very friend-shaped. Obviously, depending on your design, you can make him more and more freaky and more menacing, like a separatist droid. So my other designs on the board looked a little bit like that. What is that strange coffee table dog? It kind of freaks me out, but also I kind of want to make it at a later time. If any of the designs I showed you want to see me actually go and make in a later video, let me know down in the comments. I'm more than happy to give it a go. Otherwise, I hope you enjoy the video, and if you make your own Star Wars droids, feel free to tag me on Instagram and various other social medias, and I'll give them a look. I'd love to see what you guys make. So if you like what you saw, please consider subscribing, and I'll catch you next time. Farewell!